this is Amy Monaghan with EHR TV. We are at HIMSS 2012 in Las Vegas. Today I'm with Tom Turi, Senior Vice President of Emdeon. Thank you, Tom, for being with us today.
It's my pleasure.
Tom, tell me a little bit. You're showcasing at the Interoperability Showcase this year. Can you tell me a little bit about your involvement with that?
Well, in the Interoperability Showcase, we're displaying our tools that providers can use to enroll for electronic payments and electronic remittances. That is a big movement today in the industry. In fact, in January, just a month ago, the Health and Human Services came out with the first set of standards towards that. In July, they're going to come out with some operating rules, and there's some mandates in the Affordability Care Act around the use of EFTs and ERAs.
Can you tell me a little bit about your involvement with co-chairing that committee to get the rules passed?
Health and Human Services outsourced, if you will, subcontracted, if you will, to the CAQH Core to help recommend what the rules, standards, mandates ought to be. So I was approached by them to help co-chair it with a banker, and also a major provider was involved. So the three of us co-chaired, and we had weekly meetings of about 90 people on a conference call every week for hours, and we created what we believe are some industry standards and operating rules that will facilitate, actually they were with the provider in mind, of how to facilitate the transmission of electronic payments and electronic remittances to the provider from the payers.
Okay, very good. Can you tell us a little bit, with the rules that were made with the physician in mind, tell us a little bit about how that might affect them or their workflow or anything along those lines?
One of the issues that a lot of providers have is that there's the multiplicity of payers that pay them. We had a talk yesterday where a small physician's office up in northern Ohio was just a small pediatric office, but they had 99 payers. If you're a hospital, you could have hundreds of payers. And if you have to individually enroll for electronic payments with your banking information at all of those, it's a nightmare. So what do? You only do a couple of your important payers. So it's not going to change the industry. So what we try to do is put standards that going forward, once these standards go into play, there's going to be one enrollment form, and all payers have to use the same enrollment form.
Okay, very good. So it makes it seem simple.
It's simple. So if you filled out one, you automatically have all the data and information to go fill out a bunch of any others. And the same is on the ERA. There were some other operating rules around things such as a provider's office has a hard time reassociating. They get a deposit in their bank account, they get this 835 or the remittance advices that come to them to explain why that payment is, but they've got to reassociate the payment that's in the bank with the data that they have, and that's hard. So some of the rules say that banking deposit has to have certain elements of data in it that correspond to the remittance advice or the 835. And the 835 has to have certain pieces of data that are in the payment data file. So it reassociates them. So there are rules along those lines, and the mandates are very strong on the payer, but not the provider. So we had this, again, provider in mind. When these mandates go into effect, which is January 1st, 2014, if a provider asks a payer for an electronic payment, an electronic remittance, the payer is obligated to pay them. If the payer is not equipped to pay them, and they have to have been certified by the Secretary of Health and Human Services by January 1st, it costs the payer $1 per day per covered life. So if you, a payer, have 1 million covered lives, you're now paying $1 million a day penalty till you can deliver to that provider electronic payments and electronic remittances. So a very big burden on the payer. No obligation, the provider doesn't have to sign up with it. Candidly, I wish the provider had a little more obligation, but they don't. But if and when the provider's ready, the payers will be obligated to deliver it to them electronically.
Okay, that's fantastic. So it sounds like you were an integral part in helping these rules come about.
Well, I tried. I tried. So we were coming, as a vendor, and I've been in the payment space for over 20 years, but in other industries, as well as over a decade in healthcare. So that just, that's the one area I know. And then we had a banker, which obviously payments banks, right? And then a major provider who is the recipient of all of this. So we made sure that we balanced what the rules were to take into account the various stakeholders. And while a payer was not part of the chair, they were active participants in the committee that actually formed the 90 people that
So you
met.
still got their input?
Oh yeah, they had a lot of input into this. So it's, but at the end of the day, the government has said, you know, we've got to stop cutting down the trees. We got to stop wasting paper. The government has pegged that there's $11 billion of savings if the industry would move to electronic payments and paper.
So it sounds like you guys are definitely moving in the right direction.
We're going, and the truth is, you know, our company, Emdeon, has solutions already there. So we're already doing this. That's what we're displaying in the interoperability. But it's really not a solution so much that the provider has to pay for. The payer retains us to equip them to be able to do this for the provider. And the provider can enroll free. And we have now over 76 payers actually paying electronically now. And so if those happen to be one of the provider's payers, they can enroll. And then we keep adding more almost weekly.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
Well, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity.
This is Amy Monaghan with EHR TV at HIMSS 2012.